Okay, I'm getting ready to nail sheetrock up and start the process of drywall work in here. But I just wanted to start by showing you that the insulation work, you got to check it before you start nailing on your sheetrock, because typically electricians and plumbers and sometimes framers, they'll come in and remove the insulation because after it's been already insulated, they may have to do some additional work afterwards, and so they'll have to remove parts of it, and then they try to put it back, and it usually, they're not that concerned, and so they don't do that good of a job. Since this is your house and you're concerned about it, you want to check it. Insulation, as you can see, it says R13. If it's jammed in there tightly, where it's jammed or crammed, instead of being fluffy, instead of R13, it might be down to R8 or R6 if it's jammed too hard. This has got a vapor barrier. We live in Las Vegas. You really don't need a vapor barrier. Also, inspectors might remove some of the insulation to inspect to see if it's done correctly or the framing's done correctly. And there again, they won't put it back correctly. So that's up to you, the homeowner. This is how I frame round windows. As you can see, I used 1/2-inch plywood around a square opening instead of sheetrock because it makes it really solid, and now when you wrap your wood or sheetrock or whatever you're going to do around that round window, it'll conform to the shape perfectly. This is the best way I've ever found to do round windows. I've also got an arched window up here that I use the exact same method on. Now that plywood method as versus sheetrock just works so much better than sheetrock. And you tape it and you pretend it's sheetrock. I mean, you prime it and it'll be just fine. And it's real easy to do before you install the window. You just lay the window down and scribe a pencil line to conform to the window shape before you install the plywood. I mean, it's as simple as can be. It turns out a perfect product, and it's incredibly easy to do. Again, checking the insulation, you make sure it's tight at the bottoms, you make sure it's tight on the sides, tight everywhere, up at the top, the vaulted ceilings, and all of that kind of stuff. You can see over here, I've got styrofoam R5 double layered back there, so it's an R10. And the reason I did that is because I've got so many, this is a theater system, 5.1 plus the cables and all that kind of stuff. I want to be able to easily move them in and out, and if I had insulation back there, you wouldn't be able to do that. Those orange boxes are called low voltage boxes, and they're just open to the rear, which makes it real simple to push, pull, and all that kind of stuff when you're installing that sort of thing. So that's an option. Some people use metal boxes that you can buy at electrical outlet places that you can jam all that stuff in there, and the electrical box is like an electrical panel. It gives you all kinds of access to run them, but this is essentially free to do it this way, and this is what I decided to do. Depends on your building codes whether you can do that or not, but anyways, that's for starters. That just gives you an idea of what you need to do before you get started nailing your sheetrock on. Check everything, because once you put that sheetrock on, it's very difficult to figure out if there's problems with wiring, insulation, and all that kind of stuff. It's just something you want to check for. It doesn't take long, but it's something you ought to do before you start nailing your sheetrock on, regardless of whether it's a brand new home or if it's remodeled like this one is. Okay, a few tools of the trade before we get started nailing this sheetrock process. I've got a box of screws. These are drywall screws. These particular ones are like 1 1/4 inches long for 1/2-inch sheetrock. And then there's this kicker here. When you're putting the sheetrock, you can just step on it and it pushes the sheetrock up from the floor. You got this hand saw here that does, it cuts sheetrock real great. And you got this little hand saw, great for remodeling and all kinds of stuff. You got your tape measure. You got to have a utility knife with lots of blades because you'll go through them, and drywall hammer. Look at the head on that thing. It's kind of rounded, and that's what is called a drywall nailing hammer. You'll need that instead of a regular hammer, which is going to cause you problems because it'll break the sheetrock, a normal hammer, whereas this round head will not do that. It'll just indent the nail. And I use hearing devices because these screw guns are really noisy. And 5-gallon buckets. I mean, everybody uses them in the business for all sorts of things. Standing on, putting your tools in. When you start the taping process, you'll use them. And your nail bag to carry all of your nails, screws, and all that kind of stuff in. Here's your sheetrock over here. I've got a 4-foot device for your cutting your sheetrock and everything. Over here I have a rotozip, which is super handy for cutting out all your boxes and windows and all of that kind of stuff. You can cut round circles with it. And the tip of the rotozip has a blade. Let me see if I can get the view of that perfectly, if possible. The tip of the rotozip for sheetrock work like this is rounded. So when you go around an electrical box, you know, that's already in there, and you're going around it like that, it doesn't cut the first 1/4 inch. So it won't tear the heck out of your plastic box or whatever it is. It just cuts the sheetrock. You got to set the depth just right, and it works perfect. I also have this Makita impact driver, which is kind of a new product over the last few years. Kind of an expensive tool, but it's a do-all tool. I like it a lot. It drives the little screws here and there when you're not using the screw gun that's over there. Anyways, that's it for tools for getting started on nailing your sheetrock.